Hey, Ms. Bahak here, and I recently made a Descript tutorial for beginners, just kind of showing you the lay of the land, and I got a comment on that video that was asking me to do a deeper dive on editing short form clips from longer podcasts. So in this video, I'm going to show you using this episode as an example. I've already gotten the file uploaded. I got the speakers detected because I really like to use that feature with 2 or more speakers, just so you can see how often there's a back and forth happening, which can help select a segment for a clip. Or even if it's, let's just say, one full speaker the whole time. For example, this first 38 seconds, I'm going to show you how to pull that from here and optimize it for Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, wherever you want to post it. So one of the first things that I like to do once I've got the full episode in here, as you can see, it's about an hour and 20 minutes. I'm going to do a quick scan, just making sure that I don't miss anything. I find the best moments I possibly can. And anything that I find remotely interesting, I want to make sure that I'm going to tap M. That's going to add a marker. It's a good idea usually to have a description here. So you're like, okay, social media. He's talking about social media. So now that customizes the name of my marker. Anytime I want to jump back to this, I tap this button here, and you're going to see these are all the markers I've created so far. So come back here. This is my first marker. It scrolls up to that section. If I come here, this is the marker all the way at the bottom that I made earlier. So let's just say that I want to go now, once I've made all my markers, I found one of the best moments. For the sake of ease, I'm going to select the first 56 seconds here. Here's another beautiful, beautiful part of when you're making clips from Descript. When I highlight one word, at the top here, it's saying one word and 0.42 seconds. If I highlight two words, 0.5 seconds. So what I really love is as I keep dragging, it increases and shows me how long this whole chunk of text is and how many words it actually is as well. So let's just say I drag it down up until the speaker switch right here. I don't delete everything in the main composition here. What I like to do is make a new composition with this selected clip. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to hit duplicate to new composition. Now what this did, to access where to even see all your compositions, we come up to the top here, show project contents, and right here you're going to see you've got this IMP, which is the main composition I was working with, and then this is the new one with the clip that I actually selected. So if you scroll through here, you can see there's nothing extra besides the segment that was actually pulled. And so now this composition is the one I'm going to be making my edits to, because let's say I want to pull a second clip, I'm going to save it, come back here, find my markers, and decide from there, make another composition, jump back to that composition, and now let's begin optimizing. Step 1, let's turn this into a portrait aspect ratio, which is usually optimal for Instagram, Reels, TikTok, YouTube, all that stuff. So right now it's in landscape. I'm going to switch it to portrait. And immediately you're going to see that, okay, there's a lot of black space here. One format that you can use in a layout if you don't want to mess around with making it full screen and things like that, or if let's say the footage is already really bad, like it's kind of grainy, if I was to blow it up even more, it's not going to look that great. So maybe keeping it in this landscape format or just extending it a little bit more, just like that. So now it's kind of a square. So a way you could fix this layout up, you add a title, which you could include up at the top right here. And then the captions would go right underneath the speakers right there. So, okay, you've got a makeshift version of a layout there if you want. But the one that I'm gonna go with, honestly, is the full frame for the speaker every time they switch. I really like that, so I'm just gonna extend all the way down. So I've made Michael's frame full frame for when he's talking, but let's just say that I want to switch over to the second speaker and alternate frames. Even if they're not saying anything in this part, maybe it's just a little nod and then we switch back. So what I'm gonna do is add a scene here, because when you add a scene boundary in Descript, that's the equivalent of making a cut. If I don't do that, just kind of adding this enter space here doesn't do anything. So any change I make is going to affect the entire clip or episode itself. So to avoid that, what we're doing, we just hit enter here, and I'm going to hit add scene. Okay. And now we have to close off this scene. So for example, if I'm hitting this first section here, if you select that, this is completely separate from the rest of the episode right now. So what I'm going to do is, let's just say highlight this to see, okay, how long is this? About 2.3, I want to go maybe 2.8 seconds right here, or 3.3 seconds. Cool. Add scene. Perfect. So now this middle section right here that I'm highlighting, I'm going to move it over so that we now have Bryce as the main speaker. Let's see, did I crop this out more? Okay, so now we have Bryce in full frame here as well. And then it should switch back after this scene back to Michael.
Making that decision every time. It's taking the stare.
There we go, right there. If I wanted to do that again, I would add another scene and continue to repeat. If you had 3 speakers, you would need to do this a couple times as well. And this is where the speaker labels are super helpful. So if you see, okay, Bryce is talking now, let's add scene, and we can keep switching back and forth. Just like that. And then basically once you're done with that part, one of the things that you're gonna do is now work with your captions. So you've probably been waiting for this moment. What you're gonna do is hit templates and come down to captions. I definitely recommend starting with this section versus the other way is you come over to the T and you select captions here at the bottom. There's a lot more formatting and stuff that you're gonna have to do with that route. So come over here, hit the templates, let's come down to captions and let's go over some of these styles. So karaoke is where the word highlight changes every time, you know, the speaker is changing words essentially. So you can preview this if you just hover your mouse over each one of these, like one word captions. Sometimes this is really nice for inspirational, motivational quote type stuff to keep it simple and not too distracting. So this is a format you could certainly use. I'll show you one of my personal favorites. It's with the yellow highlight and the slanted bold one right here. So if you scroll down, it's called skewed, I guess, bold skewed right here. But this is the skewed version with the yellow highlight. So let's just say I tap this, okay? As you can see, it only added that to scene 5, okay? Because scene 5 is what I was selecting when I chose that, for example. I would mess around with the positioning of this, right? So play around with where you decide to position this. If I go too low here or I go too high, this is dead space when you're on some of these platforms. It gets covered by the caption or whatever it might be. So I want it to be somewhat visible for sure. And I may want to
the changes, because today we often
customize like the shadow. I want to add a border here. Okay, good. That looks a little bit darker right there. And now something that you're going to want to do is you could definitely adjust the position, right? If I wanted it to just be one line, I do that. And now the whole caption.
A bit harder, and that stuff, it adds up to just giant changes.
Shorter, right? You can mess around with the size of the text here if you would like. You can also change up the font. So something I go to is the bold font. This is a custom font I downloaded. You can just Google that. And once you download that, you add that font to your drive. And now, for example, when I just switch to my bold font,
look for like these, we swing for the fences, right?
Boom.
It's like we go
It's
for
done.
heroic.
Now, let's just say, what do you do for scene 4, 3, 2, 1 here? If we want to keep this exact same captioning, I literally would just drag it all the way over to the beginning, okay? And what this did was basically, if we play now.
How can I do these little things?
Exactly what we had in scene 5, that same formatting for it, we dragged all the way over to the very beginning. But let's just say, for example, that up to scene 3 is where that slanted one begins. And in scene 1, for example, I'm going to come here and I'm going to change to this one, skewed karaoke.
How can I do these little things?
Okay, again, same thing, I might want to change, okay, the thickness of that a little bit, the positioning of that so it's in a viewable space. I'm I'm gonna add a little bit of a border here. And then let's just say that you wanna change the color from blue to the actual yellow that's showing up later in the video. I just hit yellow there.
How can I do these little things whenever I have the opportunity that although they might be slightly harder in the
boom, and I'll say we jump over to here.
It's taking the stairs. It's being willing to sit with
you got a different version applied there. Now, I'm gonna show you one of my favorite styles, okay? So let's just say we come over here into scene 1. I'm gonna hover over the template section, come back to captions, bold with a drop shadow, okay? So let's just hit play.
How can I do these little things?
As you can see, when I make a change to the caption in the first scene, it's giving me the option to apply to all scenes, okay? Which is not bad in most scenarios. In certain senses, if you do want it to be different, then obviously, let me show you if you wanted to rotate every couple words side to side, the way a lot of popular captions are, this is how you would do that. How can I do these little things right here? I would create a scene. I'm gonna make it, let's just say 2-line, just like that, right? And then, and that one's straight, we're gonna come over to scene 2. And let's just say I'm gonna add another scene right here, boom. So this one, what we're gonna do is we're gonna rotate. So if you hover over the corner of these, you're gonna eventually see a portion, where is it? Right here. Right there, if we select that, okay, you get to rotate. Now, if we jump to scene 3, you'll see it's not rotating, right? So we had the rotation here, this way. We jump to scene 3, it's straight. And this is scene 3, by the way, right? We come back to scene 4 here. Let's say we want to make this rotating the other way, right? So if you wanted to make this coming this way, then this one, in scene 5, we're back to straight. Let's watch from the beginning.
How can I do these little things whenever I have the opportunity that although they might be slightly harder in the short term, they're going to improve my life in the long term? It is making that decision.
Okay, so obviously I could keep customizing this to make it look a little bit cleaner when it's doing those rotations, but you can see how you can now animate the text in a custom way. So not just the templates that they're offering you, but if you decide, hey, I want to tweak the color, I want to tweak the rotation, or how much text is shown to me at one time, you can do that stuff pretty easily. And the next thing you're probably wondering is, how do we add emojis into the mix? So something that's really nice here is to add an emoji, one of the things that you're going to do is, let's say, how can I do these little things? This is the place where I want the emoji. So I'm going to highlight that text. I'm going to hit title and add just title. And then I'm going to hit FN on my keyboard. And now it brings up my emoji options. I hit thinking, right? The way that you highlight this, and if you wanted to increase the size, you could go boom. So your emoji's a little bit bigger, right? Let's make sure to select this layer. And then let's say I move it over here. In my timeline, as you can see, it is a layer above this caption track here. So if I was to come back to the beginning.
How can I do these little things whenever I...
Right, so if I wanted to shorten that, I now just shorten my little emoji pop-up.
How can I do these little things whenever I have the opportunity?
Okay, so adding emojis, pretty easy. You can kind of do the same thing in terms of rotating them, adding a little bit of a shadow to it if you would like, and things of that nature. It's pretty easy to do this in Descript relative to Premiere. In Premiere Pro, you would have to drag actual image files of that emoji that you wanted to use into the timeline. And if you have to do it that way, just make sure that you're downloading a transparent version from Emojipedia.org or .com. That's typically where I grab that from. Now the next thing is going to be, let's say we want to add some GIFs and B-roll into the mix. So on top of the emojis, I want to highlight this section right here. Okay. Once I highlight this chunk of text, I'm going to come over into here, and I typed in hard because it was like slightly harder in the short term. What can we
choose? Let's say
it's this one. Okay, so we've got this little clip right here. it perfectly overlaid that on top of my selected chunk of text. So now it's just going to be a positioning thing. Let's say I want to bring this all the way up to the top so you can still kind of see his face. Also, my text, for example, now I can't see my captions.
It might be slightly harder.
Right? So one thing I can do is I'm going to right click this layer, and you can actually move backwards or send to back, or you could drag it in your timeline as well, but I'm just gonna hit move backwards, and all of a sudden our caption has popped up to the front. So
it might be slightly harder in the short term. They're gonna improve my life in the...
Just like that. Now let's come back to that section because I wanna show you this right here. When you select some B-roll, let's come over to this side panel. It's on loop automatically. So you wanna usually switch it to once. When you switch it to once, it's gonna play once and then it's over. But if you need it to fill, let's say 5 seconds, and it loops over and over for 5 seconds, you would just select loop, and then it would fill that time frame. I would just work through the script line by line, and any moment where there's an appropriate place to actually add a visual, whether it's an emoji, whether it's a shift in the way that the text is animated, or whether it's adding a GIF to kind of break up the static nature of it, anything that you can add here into these short form clips definitely holds attention and helps in a fast-paced environment. Just remember, as you are deciding where to kind of add these different pieces of B-roll and different visual effects, that you continue to make scenes. So when I hit enter and just add a scene, this is going to make it very seamless for me to simply drag and drop any additional footage that I want in here. So let's just say we swing for the fences, right? It's like we go, so right here, we swing for the fences, right? That alone, that line, if I want to come over here, add a scene, okay. If I want to isolate this line right here, and let's just say that I actually have a video image of me, you know, swinging a baseball bat, and that's laying around somewhere, I would literally just drag that file and hover it over this piece of text right here, and it would overlay whatever image or video that is directly on top, just like it did with this GIF that I selected. So if I come over to the GIF here, I could select anything and it would basically consume that whole scene. Typically, when you've got a file, like let's say all of your files are going to show up here. So if, for example, I had another piece of B-roll, let's just assume this is different, and I wanted to change exactly which part of it I want to use, I would use this segment right here, okay? So I want the very end, and I'm gonna hit add. And as you can see, it just cut up that specific moment.
Swing for the fences, right?
And kept that piece of B-roll. Now let's undo that, but you get the idea. So shooting your own B-roll of you typing, talking, working out, doing whatever that could be used in your own short form clips, that's definitely awesome, and it spices up your videos and makes it more engaging. But if you don't have that, then 3 things that I would use are using word animations and captions, using emojis, using GIFs, and other images that would help to keep it visually stimulating. Now, once I have added everything into my composition, all the visual effects, everything I could possibly want, I'm gonna make sure the audio and everything is good. Again, because we're assuming that you've already edited the podcast and you're working off an edited version, I'm not adding more, you know, color grading and more audio effects and things like that to the clip, but let's just say it was unedited footage, then I would go ahead and do so in this. But this is typically the workflow that you might follow when you are editing a short form clip. Some will take you longer than others depending on how much extra animations and customizations you want to add to it. But as you can see, if you wanted to do it real quick and you want to keep it simple, Descript makes it very easy for you to do this, probably within 5 to 10 minutes if you know which clip you actually want. Once everything is edited in your timeline here, you're basically going to hover over the publish area, export, and then you just want to make sure that video is selected. I like to make sure that the resolution is definitely at least 1080p or whatever the composition is here, and then keep the quality high. Something else I like to do, actually, if you hover over this, make sure that this is normalizing the volume to a good listening level. -23 is very good right there, and that's good. You know, if you wanted to rename the actual file itself, you can do that right at this moment. Like I like to go IMP, Michael Easter, clip 1, V1, hit save, and then it's gonna go ahead and actually export. And then you can get started on your second clip. That's one of the awesome things about Descript's new update they've made is you can have multiple windows and projects open at once and be editing them and exporting them all out at once, which wasn't possible in their classic version. And then of course, the most important part of this edit being successful is you choosing the right clip in the first place. So making sure that the content itself that you're going to be talking about and adding all these effects and animations to is actually good. That's really important, because if it's not a good segment and you do all of this extra work to it, then it's really a waste of time sometimes. So take the extra time to flip back to, you know, your first initial composition and find the best moments. Once you do, you can kind of follow the steps that we went throughout in this video. And if you got something out of it, drop a comment. I'd love to know. If you'd love to see another tutorial or video related to this, also drop a comment. But thank you so much for your time today and hanging out, and I'll see you next time.